The first thing that came up for me was like this pool where you could bet on the price of some Labubu release that's about to happen. Like, is it going to be more than $120? Are they going to be more than $130? It was like, I really was like, I can't imagine trying to explain this to myself 5 years ago. Like, but that's where we're at.
Emily Stewart is a senior correspondent at Business Insider. One of her beats is gambling, and that's been getting pretty weird recently because people aren't just betting on sports now. They're betting on real life. Okay, betting on whether or not the next Labubu drop is going to be over or under $130. Okay, You don't know.
No.
I don't know. Somebody has a friend who works at Labubu Incorporated or whatever it is, and they know, and they can just say, hey, look, I'm about to put a G on one of these sides. How much is it going to be? I'll split it with you. Boom, 500 easy. That just seems ripe for manipulation. Insider trading, whatever you want to call it.
The CEO of Polymarket did an interview the other day with Axios, and they asked him about this.
Nobody is under the impression that nobody knows the answer, right? And I think what's cool about Polymarket is that it creates this financial incentive for people to go and divulge the information to the market and the market to change.
When you say divulge, you mean the people who actually know?
Yeah, or someone tells someone and then the market responds. And
he kind of hinted at the point that, like, this is sort of the point of prediction markets. Like, the idea is that they are supposed to, like, predict, right? Like, the wisdom of the crowds, et cetera, et cetera. So to some extent, like, that's kind of the way it's supposed to go. Your friend who works at Labubu, whatever, like, tells you, and then you tell other people, and, like, the crowd figures it out.
That's why I wanted to talk to Emily. She's been covering the rise of gambling for the past few years and detailing this movement to turn everything into a casino. And her latest article on this is titled, appropriately enough, Everything's Casino. You have a line in your article that says, the answer to, hey, is all of this activity on prediction markets kosher, seems to be shruggy emoticon. And there is a shruggy emoji on the screen right now because that's probably the best explanation I can think of where we're at right now. Is like, I don't know.
This is, like, pretty stereotypical to say, but, like, it's like the Wild West a little bit right now, and it has been for a while.
This is Kill Switch. I'm Dexter Thomas. What would you say it was that really started this boom that we're in gambling in the US right now?
I do think a lot of it does come to sports betting, right? So in 2018, the Supreme Court struck down a federal law saying that sports gambling was illegal in the United States. And then a bunch of states started to legalize it. And, they say that they have good reasons for this, that it's a good source of tax revenue. Never mind that some of that tax revenue goes to, like, gambling addiction programs, but they start to see that this is a way to raise money. And right now, about, I think, like 38 states have legalized sports gambling.
Over the past few years, sports betting in the US has exploded. Close to 1 in 4 Americans have participated in sports betting over the last year, and all that betting last year generated about $13.7 billion in revenue for the sports betting companies, obviously, and the overall betting market is projected to reach over $60 billion by the end of the decade. So who are these betting companies? Well, for all intents and purposes, there's basically two: FanDuel and DraftKings. Together, they control about 80% of the US market. Both of these companies started out as apps for fantasy sports, where you make up pretend sports teams to compete against your friends' pretend sports teams. Fun little hobby while you watch the game. But after the Supreme Court opened the door to legal sports betting, both those companies pivoted fast.
So basically in, like, 2022, sports gambling started in New York, and it was, like, literally everywhere. You could not escape it. It was really, like, on every ad, on every channel. And also what a lot of these companies were doing was giving you, like, free money to bet with. And so a lot of people did that. And I made, like, $300, $400 off of it. I knew people who made like $3,000 off of it.
Oh, so you partook.
I partook. And I will say a lot of these companies have stopped giving those away because people figured out how to game them. It was just one of those things where like sports gambling was everywhere. And I was like, well, what's all of the hullabaloo about? And it really felt like every bar, every sporting event, you know, you go to a basketball game now and there's a group of 20-year-olds in front of you who are on FanDuel placing bets.
In the past, when most people thought about gamblers, you'd have these images of casinos in Las Vegas, maybe people wearing some Ocean's 11 type suits, people gathered around a poker table, or maybe just someone chain smoking in front of a slot machine. But today, a realistic picture of a gambler is a little different. It's mostly just someone staring at their phone.
Your phone's right in your pocket. It's real easy to do. It's real fun to do. Gambling is entertainment. Gambling is a form of fun. And it is a way, I think, you know, for young men to bond. And what we're seeing now, especially with sports betting, is it's really been embraced kind of by everyone. You know, the leagues really resisted this for a long time. And now if you watch, you know, I was watching the NFL over the weekend and, you know, like the announcers are listing out their parlays.
Okay, a parlay is a bet that links multiple small bets together. So like you could bet that your team will win, or you could bet that your team will win and that they'll win in double overtime, and that the winning point will be a field goal. There's a pretty small chance of all that happening in a chain, but if all those bets do come true, the payout can be huge. Sports leagues in the US used to really resist betting. They were worried that it would impact the integrity of the game. But illegal betting markets continued to grow, and the leagues started to change their tune.
I am a Packer fan, right? I'm from Wisconsin. Like, so usually I would just watch like the Packer game, right? But if I'm betting on all of these games, suddenly, you know, these guys are watching all Sunday. They're watching every single game. And that's happening too on Saturday when they're betting on college sports. A big part of what's happening here is like everybody's figured out that this is a big way to make money. And all of these sports leagues that were kind of like icked about it have suddenly recognized the opportunity.
When you open one of these apps, it's got pretty much every sports league you'd expect listed across the top. There's the NFL, the MLB, the NBA, the UFC, along with some leagues that you probably not only didn't realize that you could bet on, but that you probably didn't even realize exist. Tap any of those leagues and it drops you into a menu of games that are happening right now. The odds are updating in real time, and there's flashy promos trying to pull you into a bet. And for example, if you're watching an NBA game on League Pass, you can actually sync your FanDuel account so that your live bets show up right on the screen as you watch. The whole experience is built to keep you exploring, keep you tapping, and keep you betting.
They're honestly well designed, you know. I'll go in and open it up and it like lists out for me like what are live games. Maybe I just wanted to gamble on, I don't know, like the Chiefs this weekend. But like, I wonder what's going on now. So I can get that kind of like instant gratification, quick hit. And they also do try to entice you to take like harder bets to win, but they offer like a bonus. So let's say you do like a 5-game parlay or whatever, but you would win extra if you were to win. But like the odds are very, very low that you are going to win.
There's even social pages that show the bets that your friends are making. It makes betting something social so that you check in on it like you check social media. I mean, a lot of the things that you're describing are things that you see on TikTok or things that you see on Instagram. It can figure out something that, okay, you're interested in betting on football games. Mm-hmm. How about you bet on this baseball game?
Yeah.
How about you bet on the college baseball game? When
I reported on this last year, I talked to an expert who kind of like compared some of these apps to like dating apps or even, you know, like a slot machine, right? It's like very solitary activity and it's just kind of like endless. If you're on a baseball game, you can bet on every pitch. Like I have a good friend here in New York who I think has like a slight gambling problem, but not the biggest. And sometimes I'll look over at him and we'll be at a bar like watching a game and I realize like he's betting on every single pitch that's going to happen. Or he'll ask me, do you think this is going to be a touchdown or not? And he's like not a sports guy. He just likes gambling.
So maybe you're not a sports guy, or let's just keep it gender neutral. Maybe you're not into sports. Well, that's okay because these sports gambling apps have realized that they can keep making money off of you by expanding to things beyond sports.
So like last year, DraftKings, which is a sports betting company, they bought a lottery company. Right. And you're like, well, wait, like what's going on? Like an online lottery. And that's because, again, like, okay, we got you into sports gambling, but maybe like, well, you like the lottery too. Or even like, Caesars and MGM have sports betting apps. And what's going on with the casinos is like their population is aging, right? Like a lot of like 22-year-olds are not maybe hitting up Vegas, certainly not Atlantic City. But it's a way to get you in the door. Maybe you start sports betting and suddenly they say like, hey, why don't you come visit us in Las Vegas? And hey, now you're a member of our little rewards club or whatever. I was talking to this guy named Chris Grove, who's like a gambling investor out in Las Vegas. And he made a point to me. He was like, a lot of these companies are betting that once you bet on one thing, you'll bet on another thing. That is really, really played out where I think Americans have gotten sort of, a real taste for this. And it really shows up everywhere, right? Once you get a taste for it, you start to figure why not. And, like the prediction markets right now are really spreading in the United States. And that's where like you predict event outcomes. And they're really jumping in on sports gambling because that's a good, like, it's not a gateway drug, but it's a gateway to something.
The gateway to gambling on everything. That's where prediction markets come in. So in 2024, in the lead up to the US presidential election, we started to see a new trend in gambling, betting on real world events.
The thing that is undeniable was the night of the election, Polymarket was the first destination to basically convey that Trump had won.
That's Shane Copeland, the CEO of Polymarket, the same guy from that Axios interview that we played earlier.
We were in the office and we were looking at the odds and it on Polymarket, and it looked like a done deal. And if you were just watching TV, you would think it's neck and neck.
These companies like do have this high-minded thing of like, we want to focus on like the wisdom of the crowds, and like people will put their money where their mouth is. And like in politics, they will say, this is actually like a better indicator than the polls because people are actually like investing their money in this. Like,
prediction markets sell shares and answers to questions about the future. So if you think something will happen, you buy yes shares. If you think it won't happen, you buy no shares. As more people trade, the prices move up and down, and those prices work like odds about how likely the event is. So let me just give you some examples from right now when I'm recording this episode. So here's one. Okay. Do you think that Trump will use the word communism this week, either in a press conference or online? If you do, you can bet on it. Current markets are predicting 66% odds of that happening. Okay, here's another one. Do you think that Zoran Mamdani will be Times Person of the Year? So there's actually a potential leverage opportunity here because the markets say only 2% yes. Or you can go with the safer bet, go with the crowd, because 64% of people are betting yes to artificial intelligence being the person of the year. Or you can just bet on the weather. You can bet on whether or not the temperature will hit between 46 and 47 degrees Fahrenheit today in New York. If it doesn't make it there, or if it goes higher than that, you lose all your money. And so on. You get the idea. So where do you make these bets? Well, right now there's two main players in prediction markets, Kalshi and Polymarket.
They're both pretty new, like pandemic era things. Kalshi is right now up and running in the US. You can go on and use it. Polymarket was in the US for a while and then got into some hot water in 2022. Or they're on their way back right now.
Polymarket had to stop operating in the United States in 2022 because they were running without proper registration. But in 2025, they just bought a derivative exchange that had just gotten an approved registration from the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or the CFTC, which could pave the way for them to operate again legally in the United States. And okay, that was a whole lot of mumbo jumbo, so let's just get to the point here. How is it that these things can be legal?
The way that they say they are legal is not that like laws and regulations have changed, but basically they seem to have found a loophole to say that they should be regulated by the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, because traditionally like gambling has really been regulated by the states. And they say, actually, like we're doing events contracts, we're doing a different thing, and the CFTC says whether or not we should exist. And Trump's CFTC has basically said, sounds good.
Or to summarize all that, under federal law, a platform like Kalshi can operate because they're registered as something called a designated contract market. In that framework, their bets aren't treated like casino gambling. They're treated more like financial contracts, as in you and I agree to sign a contract where if this happens, you pay me. And if that happens, I pay you, just on a bigger scale.
Polymarket is about to get an investment of up to $2 billion from the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange. I think both of them have involvement from Donald Trump Jr. So, I mean, the president and his family are involved in prediction markets. They're in crypto. Like, they're involved in some of this stuff for sure.
And they're only getting more popular. As of December, Kalshi was valued at $11 billion, and Polymarket is rumored to be not too far behind that. And part of what's fueling that growth is the regulatory gap that has allowed Kalshi, for now at least, to offer these event-based contracts in sports, even in states where traditional sports betting is banned.
Right now, if you're in a state where sports gambling is not legal, I was just in the Midwest in Wisconsin, sports gambling is not allowed there. Members of my family go across the border to Illinois where it is allowed and sports gamble. Like your phone knows where you are, right? What Kalshi says they figured out, and eventually Polymarket, they say, like, we are not subject to these state regulations. We are regulated by the CFTC. CFTC says we can exist in all 50 states. And so if you're in California, where sports betting is not allowed, in Texas, other states, you can go onto Kalshi and there will be something on there that says, will X team win tomorrow? Yes, no. And you can do that. They say it's not gambling. They kind of will hedge on whether it's betting. Kalshi's gone into some hot water because for a while they were advertising saying that you can now sports bet in California. And they say, like, that was an oops and a vendor did it and that wasn't our fault. But everybody I talked to for the story we've been talking about is like, this is gambling. It's a little silly to pretend like this is not what it is.
Kalshi has different modes, including a sports fan mode that makes the interface look almost identical to apps like FanDuel and DraftKings. And remember when I said earlier that federally Kalshi can operate, but on the state level, some jurisdictions are not having it. Just recently, the state of Connecticut issued a cease and desist, arguing that Kalshi was effectively offering sports betting without a license. Kalshi countersued, saying that the Commodities Exchange Act says that they're in the clear. And beyond sports betting, these apps are making their way into anything that can be gambled on or gamified, including the stock market, which honestly was already getting pretty gamified. Robinhood, the stock trading app, has recently partnered with Kalshi to allow NFL and college football trading all inside the Robinhood app. One of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is your article, which is entitled Everything's Casino.
Yes.
Brilliant title. I want to read a little bit from the first paragraph here. I thought the stock exchange guys were supposed to be the serious ones in the room, helping communities grow and people save for retirement, not teaming up with the guys who let you guess when the U.S. government will admit that aliens exist. But this is the reality of the year of our Lord, 2025. Americans have a growing appetite for leaving their fortunes to the fates, and businesses are eager to capitalize.
And to be fair, the alien, you can place that bet on both Polymarket and Kalshi. My editor was like, you have to be joking. And I was like, no, like you can guess it. So I think there is just like this real, confluence here of like the serious people have kind of realized like there's money to be made off of the unserious stuff. And, you think back to like the GameStop stuff, which was like, for a lot of people was like pretty fun. But for some people, it really wasn't.
All right, in case you don't remember the GameStop saga, in 2021, a bunch of investors on Reddit started buying up shares of GameStop, this store that sells video games, and they sent the prices of those shares up over 1,600% in just a few weeks. Some people made a lot of money, other people lost a lot of money. Robinhood blocked people from being able to buy the stock for a while, which was a whole other thing. There's multiple documentaries about it. Basically, it was a mess. And most of that really had almost nothing to do with the actual store that sells video games. It was pretty much just gambling.
You look at the crypto market, right? And like you have people out there who will say like, well, yes, like Bitcoin matters and there's the underlying whatever. But like if you're investing in like Fartcoin, like it is not because you believe in like the ongoing value of Fartcoin. Like I certainly hope not, you know what I mean? It's because like you think that like some other guy is going to pay more for it, hopefully later, and like you can kind of get out of the scam before you get got by the scam.
Everybody's scamming each other.
Everybody's scamming each other. Everybody thinks that like, well, maybe I can ride it up type situation. And I think really like these companies have realized there is a huge appetite for it. And like once people get an appetite, like they're going to engage in more and more and more. And I think that's where like there's real harm. Like I remember when kind of like the day trading stuff was really taking off during the pandemic, and I would talk to people who'd gotten into like options trading. And the story was always the same. It was like, I did a few and I thought I was a stock market genius. Then I did a few more and I got wiped out. And like, that's what happens at the casino, right? Like you hit on a couple and then you're up and you should walk away, but you don't. And then you lose it all and you get wiped out.
Recently, the co-founder of Kalshi said this.
It's pretty much already like a close to 100 billion a year of asset class, right? Like it's been a year. I think a very large number of people care. The long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion. And
that long-term vision is kind of already here. In just the last few weeks, Kalshi signed deals with major news networks, first CNN and then CNBC, to bring real-time prediction market data directly into their news coverage. The CNN deal gives them real-time access to data on Kalshi, and as Axios reports, quote, that data will be featured on CNN's air through a real-time data ticker and can be referenced across CNN's platforms when journalists discuss news predictions, end quote. The CNBC partnership looks pretty similar. Kalshi's data is going to be featured on business news programs like Squawk Box and Fast Money. They'll also have a dedicated Kalshi on-air ticker and a page on the website. As Kalshi's co-founder puts it, this is, quote, the next evolution, moving from data about what's happening now to real-time forecasts about what's happening next. Okay, but what's to stop people from manipulating what happens next? Just this month, a Polymarket user under the handle Alpha Raccoon reportedly made $1 million in just 24 hours. This user correctly predicted 22 of 23 bets on Google's 2025 year-end search rankings. So, confident, accurate betting on Google's specific topics. This sounds like something that would be pretty difficult to do unless you had some kind of connection to the company. Now, this might sound like I'm accusing this user of insider trading, and a lot of people actually have made that accusation. But to be clear, I am not making that accusation. Sometimes people just get lucky. But even if I wanted to make that accusation, honestly, it wouldn't matter because the CFTC's current rules don't explicitly cover insider trading in prediction markets. So legally speaking, Alpha Raccoon wouldn't have done anything wrong. But that's just one way to run it. Even if you don't have the inside scoop on something, there are other ways that you could manipulate the results of a bet. You know, the first time that I really started thinking about prediction markets is during the fires here in LA. So that was in January. And I saw that people were betting on anything and everything related to the fires.
Yes.
One of the big ones that I saw was, will the fires be 90% contained by X date? And that's when I really started thinking, okay, what happens when somebody has a stake in what happens in a natural disaster or a real world event?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I would certainly hope there's not a firefighter who's like, I'm going to sit this one out because I want to win. So there's just like something a little bit gross about betting on something that like will affect someone's actual life and livelihood, especially on the wildfires. That's an area where like the argument that it's about like the wisdom of the crowds falls apart a little bit. Like somebody on a prediction market who's in Chicago or abroad has no idea what's going on with the wildfires. Like they don't have like some special insight. And I think that's where it's a little bit like, do we need to be doing this? Like, what does it mean that like we are doing this? And it's just like sad as a society.
To be really clear here, it's less that I really think somebody is going to go out and throw a match in the brushes and try to up their chances on, winning that Polymarket bet. It's a little bit like what has happened with sports. And one of the arguments against having gambling in sports was that it will ruin our faith in the game.
Yeah.
That people will start manipulating things and we won't be able to trust that this sport that we care so much about, that this culture is pure. You expand that to reality where the local election? Is somebody putting their thumb on the scales in the election on purpose? We already don't trust local politics. We already don't trust a lot of things.
Yeah.
Now there's a financial incentive to change all these little small things, right? And that's kind of what I'm saying here is like, I think you can be watching a college game and somebody misses a pitch, and it really sucks to be watching a game and think, did he do that because he's having a bad day, or did he do that because he wants a payday?
Right. We don't trust things enough as it is, let alone where it's like, is there something weird going on here? Like everything that's happening right now with sports gambling, where it isn't like these guys aren't impervious to this stuff.
In 2024, Toronto Raptors forward Jonte Porter was banned for life from the NBA when they found out that he'd been sharing inside information and betting on games, including his own team's games. He ended up pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud, saying, quote, "I know what I did was wrong, unlawful, and I am deeply sorry," end quote. He hasn't been sentenced yet, but he's looking at 3 to 4 years in federal prison if prosecutors get their way. And this year, more major gambling accusations came down in the NBA.
We've got some breaking news this morning. Former Celtics Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups have been arrested. New York City Police Department sources tell CBS News that the arrests are in relation to 2 different federal criminal cases. One involves a sports betting ring involving former and current NBA players, including some who allegedly faked injuries. The other case involves illegal.
One of them was that like a specific player. And he was like telling people like, I am going to like say I'm injured or I'm sick during this game, right? And so that way they could take the under on how many points he was going to score during the game. Because if he wasn't playing, he wasn't going to score a lot of points. We were also seeing, it looks like there was a former player who was passing information about like LeBron James and saying like he's on the injured list or he's not playing tonight. And so then he would pass that information on and people would be able to bet then that like the Lakers were going to lose.
Now, as of December, Rozier and Billups have both pled not guilty in their cases. But gambling apps like these put athletes in a really weird position.
And then also, they're probably under pressure from family, from friends to be like, hey, like, do you know what's going on? Do you know who's on the injured list and things like that?
Right.
And also the way that, especially now with the apps, like there's a lot of prop betting going on where it's like, it's not just who will win the game. It's how many, what will happen. You can make all these teeny tiny bets throughout the game. The abuse that a lot of athletes are getting too from gamblers and bettors and just like scary messages and threats and like, some of it pretty scary that it's like, you missed a free throw and some guy is messaging you on Instagram, like threatening to go after your family or sending you a Venmo request because they lost their bet on you. And so it's like, it's not great for fans and it's also not great for the people on the field or the court.
For example, it was recently reported in The Athletic that a Major League Baseball pitcher received a Venmo request with a threatening message that reads, quote, "You owe me $9,000 because you blew the game. I need you to send me that money or I'm going to find your family." The article also quoted an NBA player who says he got threats over Instagram DM for messing up someone's parlay, and the stakes can get a lot higher than that. 404 recently reported on a really weird situation involving a live map run by the Institute for the Study of War, which tracks the front lines of the war in Ukraine. This map is considered the gold standard of information. So here's what happened. A bet was placed on Polymarket about whether or not Russia would control a specific city by a specific date. And there was $1 million in trading volume on this. And just before that date came, the map showed that Russia had just captured the city. So the bet was settled and all the money was paid out. And right after that, the map suddenly reverted. And it showed that Russia had never controlled that city, which suggested that someone with edit access had redrawn the map just before the bet ended.
Maybe in 10 years, we'll look back and be like, this was fine. And everybody was like setting their hair on fire for no reason. But I do sometimes wonder if we're like in our like Marlboro Man moment of like, smoking was like cool and fun before everybody was like, holy geez, like this is maybe not great. And like right now, the narrative around so much of this is like, it's interesting and fun and like, maybe like some of this stuff is a little icky, but like whatever, it's just like quirky. And are we gonna soon kind of look and think, oh man, this stuff was like really bad in a lot of ways.
Okay, but where are we going from here? So maybe it's as Emily writes in her article that, quote, it speaks to a sort of nihilism within the American public. The idea that the system's flawed, so you may as well go for it with a gamble. So maybe what we need to understand first is the background of why this desire to gamble is so strong.
I do think, I mean, this is just like human nature, right? And I think like we need to understand like why people enjoy these things. And I do think, I think sometimes it's hard to know how much like paternalism we should have around gambling, around investing. It's hard to say to, a random 22-year-old who's on Robinhood or on DraftKings, like, you can't do any of this. But meanwhile, like these titans on Wall Street can do whatever they want. You just kind of like at least have to acknowledge like enough people think this is fun. So like what's going on here? And like if it is not going to be outlawed completely, like at least like we got to talk about guardrails, but like you got to talk to the people who are into it to know where the guardrail should be.
Goodbye. Yo, so one more thing. So remember when I was talking about the bet for who was going to be on Time's cover for the Person of the Year issue? And I was saying that the quote unquote safe bet, because 66% of people were betting yes on this, was artificial intelligence. Well, as we're editing this right now, the bet has ended because Time's cover has come out. And AI is on the cover in big letters, but you got to read the whole cover because the full phrase is, well, the winner this year is plural. It's the architects of AI. So it's also got a picture of Sam Altman on there. There's Jensen Huang and a bunch of other people. And now a whole bunch of gamblers are big mad because they bet specifically on AI winning and they feel like this should count. But both Polymarket and Kalshi have said that no, this does not count. And so I guess that the people who bet on other winning win. And I mean, when I was first reporting on this, I took a screenshot of the page that had all of the different options, and other was so far down the list that it doesn't even appear on my screenshot. I think it's probably a fraction of a percent. So congratulations to those people, I guess. So anyway, $55 million in trading volume. And the vast majority of that, it looks like, were betting on artificial intelligence winning. And they just lost whatever money they put into this. You cannot make this stuff up. Anyway, that's it from us. Catch you on the next one. It's nuts, man.